This week on the agenda, the TikTok battle. What's really behind the US government's attempt to force ByteDance to sell the world's most talked about social media platform? Even by social media standards, TikTok's rise has been little short of staggering. Since its launch in 2016, the platform's been downloaded 4 billion times, attracted more than 1.5 billion active users monthly, and had more than 1 trillion video views. TikTok is the most talked about app in the social media landscape. But not everything has been plain sailing. Countries including Australia, New Zealand, Belgium, Canada, Norway and the UK have banned the app from all government mobile devices on the grounds of data protection. 10 Downing Street's official account still has 280,000 followers and more than 900,000 likes, although it hasn't posted since 2022. TikTok says it's spent more than $1.5 billion on data security. It initially based its data centers in America, Singapore and Malaysia, and now it's been forced to move them to Dublin, with other centers due to open in Norway and a second in Ireland by the end of this year. But it's in the US where the real battle's taking place. There, lawmakers have accused the platform of serving as a tool for the Chinese government. In April, President Biden signed a bill which will ban app stores from offering TikTok downloads in the US from January next year, unless parent company ByteDance sells it. The president's re-election campaign, though, is still using its official account, posting several times a week to its more than 320,000 followers. The American politician with the most followers, though, is Senator and former presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders, who has 5 times as many followers, 1.5 million. The politician with the biggest TikTok audience? Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, with more than 9.5 million followers. American influencers aren't happy. They say a ban would be devastating and have taken to Capitol Hill to try and get their voices heard. And TikTok itself is fighting back, filing a lawsuit to block the proposed US law. It says the app is an extraordinary intrusion on the free speech rights of its 170 million American users. Joining me now is Dr. Milton Mueller, head of the Internet Governance Project at the School of Public Policy at the Georgia Institute of Technology. Thanks for coming on the agenda. Now, why are there concerns about TikTok's Chinese ownership?
Well, the United States is in the middle of a huge panic about its relationships with China. It is systematically disassembling its trade connections to China in almost all of the digital realm, everything from electric vehicles to international cables to drones, and so TikTok is just one of the most visible targets in that process.
Is there actually any data, though, to support those concerns?
Of course not. No, it is really, we've reached the point where mere connections to China, any kind of connection, ownership is enough to cast suspicion on a business. And unfortunately, politically, it's simply almost indefensible now for a company to say, well, we're just trying to make money and compete in the market. The fact that they have Chinese ownership casts a threat or is perceived as a threat by many people in the dialogue here.
But if there is no data, no hard facts and figures, why do you think that these issues persist? I mean, is it simply that the US is attempting to maybe demonize China as its power and influence grows on the international stage?
Well, definitely. That's obviously true. The U.S. is trying to show that it is in a kind of a zero-sum competition with China over power in the world, which I don't think is true, but it is very easy for people to make that case. And we have, a precedent in the Cold War where we kind of did the same thing to the Russians, which actually was more of a threat and did not have the trade relationship. So it's not hard for anybody in the United States political sphere to cast suspicion on an actor by saying that they're connected to China.
But TikTok isn't the only social media platform, network, if you like, that gathers its users' data. I mean, is there actually any difference between the kind of data a TikTok user might give ByteDance and, say, a Facebook or Instagram user might give Meta?
No, there's really not any significant difference between the type or the method of data collection. In some ways, TikTok might have some variations in what they collect, and Facebook or Meta might collect even more. But fundamentally, the issue of privacy or data protection really has nothing to do with the ownership or the parental ownership of the company. It really is more of a policy issue regarding, how the government decides to pass laws and rules regarding data protection.
I did want to talk a little bit about the ownership, though, because if you look at the corporate structure of TikTok, it's incorporated in the Cayman Islands, and it's got there's more than 60% owned by global institutional investors, BlackRock, General Atlantic, and so on, and 20% is owned by employees, including 7,000 Americans. So do you think that should maybe make more of a difference and count more in this battle?
It should, but it doesn't seem to have done so. It certainly has helped the opposition to the ban to get some support in the Senate. But clearly that support was not enough to prevent the passage of the law. And yes, it's really a very difficult case to make now, because if you have succeeded in demonizing China, then again, any connection to China, no matter how diluted, no matter how much it is shared with American investors, that seems to be enough to cast suspicion. And so, it really is kind of like a new McCarthyism, if you understand that reference from the 1950s, where we are systematically going about and saying, do you have any connection to China? Is there any Chinese components in your drones, in your social media, in your computer, in your networks? And we're trying to contain or eliminate those connections.
It's not just that the United States that has this particular stance, though, is it? I mean, the US is concerned about the relationship between TikTok and the Chinese intelligence sector, but Europe is very concerned about the relationship between American companies and the American intelligence sector. So I wonder to what extent this is just about everybody protecting their own interests and accusing foreign powers of being threats.
Well, it's a very bad pattern, because it does set in motion a dynamic in which, if this is if any foreign company is potentially a spy or agent for a foreign government, then the entire global internet starts to unravel. And China is equally responsible for this pattern, because they have been excluding foreign actors from their media industries and from their internet industries for some time. But when the United States, which used to be the advocate of an open and global internet, when they turn the corner and start becoming nationalistic, then it's inevitable that the whole system will kind of unravel. And that's going to be bad for everybody. It's going to be bad for Chinese companies. It's going to be bad for American consumers and American companies, because two can play that game. If social media are seen as the agent of a foreign government simply because their corporate headquarters is in that government's jurisdiction, then again, we're starting to go back to a nationally walled garden approach to the internet, and I think that's really a bad thing.
Security issues, though, have trickled down to Europe as well. But the EU has its own way of managing and dealing with their concerns in the context of the app. And a ban doesn't seem to be part of that conversation, does it?
No, that's correct. They are taking a more reasonable approach, which is we're going to regulate platforms as platforms, and we're going to try to define legal obligations and prohibitions and enablements for these platforms that apply to all of them in a non-discriminatory fashion.
And something else I was thinking about is how important the US market actually is to TikTok? Rather than have to sell out, could they just do without it? I mean, considering the intellectual property here, the innovative tech that really makes TikTok what it is, I mean, do you think that ByteDance would say, actually, we'd rather shut down in the US than sell?
I think they might have to, yes. I don't know what it means for the US part of TikTok to be walled off from the rest of it. I mean, technically, I just don't know how that works. I'm sure it could work, but it would be something like the Chinese Great Firewall, it would be a very strange thing. And it would definitely undermine the competitiveness and the value that users have from TikTok. So to answer your question about how much of the value of TikTok relies on access to the US market, I think it's an enormous amount of it. I think there are, over 150 million US users. Now, not all of them are active content producers, but most of the people I watch on TikTok are, not all, but I'd say about 80 to 90% are based in the US or the US English-speaking world. So I just think that this would be literally a ban. They're not going to be able to really sell it. They're not going to be able to fragment it. It's going to have to essentially shut down TikTok in the United States if it succeeds. And of course, I think that's the intent. That's the real intent of the advocates of this law. They simply made it a forced sale in order to try to finesse some of the constitutional issues that would come from an outright ban.
And what about this movement from TikTok users and those who are against this ban? Do you think they're going to gain traction? Might that make a difference if their voice gets loud enough?
It's hard to say. It would be, I think, influential in certain jurisdictions, in congressional races or maybe Senate races. But a very unfortunate thing about this decoupling with China is that it has become quite bipartisan, so that, you can't say, oh, I'm not going to vote for Biden because he passed this TikTok ban, because the Republicans have been pushing the ban as well, and it's not clear that they would, if they were in power, they would eliminate it.
If ByteDance were to sell, I mean, who benefits here?
Well, obviously, the incumbent social media companies would benefit. But fundamentally, I think the U.S. national security establishment and the sort of the more authoritarian and nationalistic elements of the U.S. government would benefit by eliminating an uncontrolled source of information, a source of opinion. A lot of the support for the TikTok ban came after the Palestinian protests, and many people who were pro-Israel were complaining that there was lots of anti-Israel sentiment on TikTok. And to me, that is just a dead giveaway that a lot of this is about suppressing alternative points of view. And I think it's been clear that the incumbent social media outlets have been more susceptible to governmental influence, U.S. government influence to sort of tamp down or moderate opposition to U.S. foreign policy.
So, Dr. Mueller, how do you see this playing out from here?
I think TikTok is going to mount a legal challenge, a constitutional challenge to the ban. I think that has at least a 60% chance of succeeding because it is a very clearly a very severe restriction on speech that could be illegal under the First Amendment. If that doesn't work, and I think that will take at least a year to play out, I believe that TikTok will simply shut down in the U.S. and continue as an less regulated app in a global space that doesn't include the U.S.
Dr. Milton Mueller, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Still to come here on the agenda. The influencer issue. What impact is the TikTok battle really having on content creators?
We are all connected. Across borders, across continents, connected by ideas, a shared humanity. Stay connected.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw.
The cleanup operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So into the attention of world leaders.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
And in these mountains, they recently finished building a power plant.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back to the agenda. TikTok may have more than 1.5 billion monthly users, but vital to its success are the more than 1 million people considered content creators. They make the sticky videos that drive users to the platform. But what does it take to become a TikTok influencer? And what does the legal battle in the US really mean to them? With me now are two of TikTok's top creators, Anne Russell and Hums. Hello to both of you. Thanks for coming on the agenda. And I want to start with you. Now, cleaning is your thing. How did you get started with TikTok?
It was purely luck. I started, I think like a lot of people did in lockdown. And like for, I think probably most creators, something you do, you have one video that captures people and it kind of grows from there. And it wasn't cleaning content I ever intended to make because obviously I'm a very unintentional influencer.
2.5 million followers, though. What was that video that caught that attention to start with?
Somebody asked, believe it or not, what a bay leaf did in cooking. And I have done my time as a professional cook, so I knew, and I just thought, I'll tell them.
And that was it. And suddenly you had people following and you were inspired to make more and more videos.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And you just kind of keep going. You know, people ask me questions and I answer them. And then, of course, I just make other videos on anything that catches my fancy. Like I said, most of it is luck. Yeah, I think on anything like this, you can try and try and try. But unless you are lucky enough to have one thing that catches people, you know, you can try forever, but it only takes one video that catches people and then you're on.
And Hums, how about you? Are you an accidental influencer or was this all part of a big plan?
Strategic. Mine was definitely planned. I knew when TikTok was taking off about, let's say, just over 2 years ago, that I don't want to miss this boat because being a creative, whether that's music or fashion, or I always knew there's something that I wanted to do is like be a full-time creative, and I'm going to have to market myself and build a personal brand online. So I just thought, I've got to take the plunge. I've got to figure this out. And I just started putting out TikToks every single day. At times for like, it was like 3 TikToks a day for over 2 months. And they were just, you know, not really breaking 1,000 views, sometimes 50 views. But I knew each video I'm going to get better. And then I felt more comfortable to tell my own mental health story, because that's what I'm mainly known for now, ice baths and mental health. But at the start, it was more trying to jump on trends and you know, learn the ropes. Eventually, I talked about mental health. And just as Anne said, that's what captured people. That's what people first resonated with when I was just open and honest about my story. And specifically when I did that jumping in a wheelie bin full of ice and telling my story, it was my big viral moment that Anne's referring to. and that's kind of, you know, after that, your sort of career begins, doesn't it?
So you had to have a focus, and it was when you, I suppose, zoned in on something that and committed to that rather than just posting random videos. When you zoned in on that, that's what hooked them.
Exactly, and also the authenticity, because when I was jumping on trends, it wasn't authentic. It was quite clear I was trying to go viral. But when it was talking about my mental health journey, that was the authentic thing. And then, you know, the ice bath stuff is what really connected with people. And I carried on doing that, and that is why I was able to build a career from it.
And why TikTok? Why do you think it's different in that way from the other social platforms out there, Hums?
I think it is the organic reach that it offers. And the thing is, right, TikTok was the first time where people could message me from Australia and be like, I came across your video. I live in Manchester. That kid, you know, 18 years old in Australia on the other side of the world is able to just like somehow come across my video and say to me that I used to have anxiety. I watched your videos. 3 weeks later, I did what you said, cold showers, meditation, nutrition, exercise, and now I don't have anxiety anymore. Like TikTok, it gave us that. TikTok for me is just like shown how lives can be changed and social media can be used as a force for good. So I'd say the main thing that sets it apart is the organic reach and how wide that reach can be.
And do you chime in with that? Do you think that's what marks TikTok out from the other contenders?
I think so. I think also that TikTok is a very intimate platform and it's much more spontaneous. You just pick up your phone and talk to it. And because of that, the contrived is very obvious. So, as Hum said, when people are being authentic, when they're being genuine, when they're speaking truthfully about their own experience, that really comes through in a way that it doesn't on the other platforms. And people respond to other humans recounting a truthful experience.
I mean, Hums, it has inspired many other imitators, hasn't it? I mean, Facebook Reels, Instagram stories. Do you use those platforms too, or are you a TikTok loyal follower?
For a while, I didn't post onto any other platform. And you know why that is? Because it felt like TikTok was more of like a friendly place. And I actually had anxiety to sort of post on Instagram Reels for a long time because I sort of felt like that's where people know me a bit better. It gave me more anxiety. But TikTok I felt was a place where I could go and be my true authentic self. And it's weird how you'd have less anxiety with it being random people, but I had more anxiety when it was okay, people who might slightly know me, like on Instagram, more like, you know, friendship groups and etc. So yeah, for a while I was simply TikTok. That was a place where I could express myself and you know, attract the new people who were similar to me. But yeah, then I ended up building my Instagram too, but probably a year after. And
you, forgive me for saying this, but you might say that you're not the typical social media influencer. What do you think that has been an asset to you? And do you think you would have been as successful on one of the other platforms?
I would not be, am not as successful. Pretty much my reach is confined to TikTok. No, I'm not at all a typical influencer. And although some of my videos are reposted onto a couple of other platforms, they never really do very well. And I think it is because, I mean, realistically, I'm lazy. I haven't got the ability or the knowledge as to how to do these beautifully edited and curated videos that do so well on other platforms. I, you know, just point the camera at me and talk. And that is, as I referred to earlier, I think where TikTok really shines through. But of course, it's a different skill set to people who can produce these wonderfully edited, curated videos that give a very precise message that they've thought about in advance.
So that raw quality is what draws you and probably your followers. But do you think that your followers worry about data? Do you think that they've got concerns? I mean, I've noticed on my For You page that official posts from TikTok itself addressing data concerns have started popping up now.
I've never had anybody on my TikTok ever worry particularly about data. It's actually quite interesting because on Facebook, you do read an awful lot about, oh, TikTok, data problems. From very often people just putting out, enormous amounts of data. So like I said, I have never had anybody on my page express those concerns on that platform.
And how about you, Hums? And what are your followers telling you in terms of data, where it's going, how it can be used?
I'll be honest, it's never been mentioned by my followers. It's just something that I see a lot in the media and in the news, specifically in like British and American news about how TikTok and the data. But I always question that because it's not like other social media platforms haven't been found out for doing that. Facebook themselves, they had a huge scandal in terms of data. So yeah, in terms of my following, it's literally never mentioned. In terms of me being on TikTok, it's not something I ever think about either.
But there's a lot of buzz at the moment, isn't there, about TikTok, certainly in the United States, and this big question mark about whether or not it's going to be banned there. What might that mean, do you think? Not just individually for your own accounts and followers, but for the platform in general. Anne, I'll start with you.
I don't know how badly it would affect TikTok in regards to advertising revenue, which is where they make their money. I think it would be a very interesting social experiment to see how a big social media platform would work without the USA being on it. I think that a lot of loyal TikTok users would find a way around the ban in any case, but it would, I assume, be the advertising revenue that it would affect. And obviously I'm really unfamiliar with TikTok's, revenue stream. So I genuinely don't know. About half of my followers are from America, so it would affect the number of followers. But, if you take those, that population out, I think it would resettle quite quickly as well.
And that you'd find followers from elsewhere. What about you, Hums? How would it affect your fan base?
I just think it would be devastating overall, because for me, besides my fan base, I see it's like TikTok has been so integral to culture, to pop culture, to music culture, fashion culture, for the last 2 or so years. And to see, and obviously, America has such a big population, has such an influence on all them culture points that I just mentioned. So you take TikTok away from that, and if TikTok hadn't been around for the last few years, so many moments wouldn't have happened. So many viral moments, so many trends, so many viral songs. Ice Spice, Pink Pantheress, Central C, all these different artists, they wouldn't have been able to have this sort of like worldwide rise, and we wouldn't have been able to experience what we have. So yeah, to see TikTok be banned in the US, I don't know. It's something I'm really hoping doesn't actually happen, because yeah, let's say only 20% of my following are based in the US. That's not the important bit for me. The important bit is the impact on culture.
Hums and Russell, brilliant speaking to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All good.
You can watch every episode of The Agenda in full on CGTN Europe's YouTube channel. And for exclusive extra content from me, my guests and the rest of the team, don't forget to check out The Agenda Show on TikTok.
Coming up on a future agenda, what's really at stake in the upcoming EU elections? And are we really going to see a lurch to the far right? But for now, from me, Juliet Mann, and from all the Agenda team here in London, goodbye.